Most churches that follow lectionary are focused today on thanksgiving and gratitude. This passage about 10 lepers being healed and only one coming back to say, "Thank you, Jesus," inspires most priests and preachers to speak of our need to be grateful, of our human need to express our gratitude to God. And that certainly is a very valid sermon, a very valid homily, but I preached it twice already here. So today I would like to point something else, perhaps equally important in that biblical story. 10 lepers were waiting outside of the gate, outside village, and crying to Jesus, "Master, have pity on us." First, we need to realize they were waiting outside the village. You see, lepers at that time, according to Jewish religion, were kicked out of their homes. They were kicked out of their villages and cities. They were literally excommunicated, meaning without community. They were separated from the village because the religious law declared them to be unclean. They were too dangerous to remain in the city. They were too dangerous to remain with their wives, husbands, children, and parents. They had to abandon the village, the family, and live with other lepers. They were not permitted to touch anyone who was healthy. They were not permitted to approach anyone who was healthy without making a noise and letting them know that I am a leper. You were marked not only with a physical illness, but as a leper you're marked as an outsider. You could not be a part of the community. Once you were declared a leper, you could not hug your child. You could not kiss your wife or husband. You were not permitted to touch anyone who was not sick. That's why the lepers are waiting for Jesus outside of the village, because they cannot be inside the village. If it happened that leprosy was healed, and it did happen occasionally, if you were somehow better and your body was free of illness, you had to go to a priest. If you were a Jew, you had to go to a priest, and that priest would officially declare you cleansed. Without such a paper and stamp from a priest, you were still banned. You were still not permitted to enter a village or your town. So priest's stamp of approval was your passport back to normal life. Without a priest declaring you okay, you could not be a part of your family or village ever again. It was good to be a priest back then. You were a physician, you were a scientist, you were a worship leader, all in one person. But this gives us a background for that story. They are total outsiders. They are the outcasts of that time. So when Jesus slows down and meets them with his pity, with his love, with his mercy, he tells them something very normal. He tells them, go and show yourself to a priest. 10 of them turn around and go to a priest. 9 of them were Jews. 1 of them was Samaritan. Samaritan means he was not Jewish. His DNA wasn't Jewish DNA. He was a Gentile, like you or I. And I would imagine as he was walking with the other 9 to see a priest, he thought to himself, hold on, why am I going to a priest? A Jewish priest is not permitted to minister to me. You see, a priest who was of Jewish religion was not allowed to minister to non-Jew. So even if he was cleansed, a priest would not be allowed to give him a paper of being cleansed. Why? Because he was not a Jew. So it's a closed circle. No matter what I do, I'm screwed. If I go to a priest, he will kick me out because I am not Jewish. I don't belong. If I don't go to a priest, I am without a paper that allows me to go back to my wife, to my family, to my village. So that one individual was outcast twice. He was an outsider because he was a leper, and then he was an outsider within the outsiders because he was not Jewish. And no matter how much he would ask and beg the priest, please help me, the priest had to say by the law, I cannot give you what you ask of me. I'm not permitted to minister to you. So what does he do? He says, forget the priest, I will go back to Jesus. Sounds familiar? Forget the priests. I will go back to Jesus. He realizes that what he had experienced, the gift of healing, the gift of amazing transformation of his life, did not come from a priest. It did not come from any particular religion. It came from his experience with living Master, from his meeting Jesus himself. So we shouldn't presume that the other 9 were ungrateful. The other 9 did what Jesus told them to do. They went to a priest. They were good Roman Catholics. They could go to the priest. The other one would not be welcomed by the priest. The other one would be kicked out by the priest. So he goes back to Jesus. A beautiful story. A story that should resonate with people in many churches, but it should resonate even more so with us at St. Stanislaus. You will read, and you have read, in the newspapers, and you have seen on TV, people talking about us as the rebel parish, as the excommunicated parish. They are not Catholics anymore, right? We don't belong anymore. Neither did those 10 lepers. And to make things worse for the one of 10, he did not belong even within the group that did not belong. He was doubly cursed. And so, as that leper, we need to do what makes sense. Go straight to Jesus. Yes, priests are good, bishops are good, and popes are good, especially this one. But the priests and the bishops and the popes are not the ones that give us the sacraments. The sacraments and the grace of God comes from Jesus. And when the priest tells you, you don't belong there, when the bishop tells you, you don't belong here, what should you do? Go straight to Jesus. Here in America, I realize people tend to be very proper. And when someone gives you a present, you are supposed to say first, oh, you shouldn't have. Right? Even though you've been waiting for that gift for weeks. First, you're supposed to say, oh, no, thank you, please don't bring anything. But don't you dare come empty-handed. So we say, you shouldn't have. You see, Jesus doesn't say that. When the one leper comes back to Jesus, he doesn't say, oh, you shouldn't have. He says, where the hell are the other 9? He says, you should have come back, and so should they. And today, we need to clearly understand we should go back to Jesus. We should disregard what the priests or bishops tell us. We should find our direct connection to God. We should remember that God welcomes us no matter what.